The emergency beacon's pulse cut through space, like a wounded animal's cry. Captain Marcus Reynolds stood on the bridge of the UES Nightingale, his knuckles white against the command rail, as the medical frigate dropped out of FTL. What greeted them wasn't a colony. It was an epitaph. New Eden, humanity's crown jewel among the stars, had been reduced to molten glass and scattered dreams. The orbital rings that once housed gardens and research stations now drifted as fields of twisted metal, their fragments catching sunlight like tears in the void. Life signs? Reynolds asked, though he already knew the answer. The ship's sensors swept through the devastation, searching for any hint of the 15 million souls who had called this place home. One, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes whispered, her voice cracking. Faint, but steady, deep underground, near what used to be the Central Research Complex. Reynolds didn't hesitate. Launch rescue teams. Full radiation protocols. Whatever did this might still be watching. The rescue pods carved through clouds of debris, their medical teams racing against time and the unknown. They found their survivor 2 kilometers below the surface, in a hardened research bunker that had somehow weathered the apocalypse above. Dr. Amanda Walker was conscious when they reached her, though her eyes held the kind of darkness that comes from watching your world end. She clutched a quantum data core to her chest, like a child with a precious toy, but there was nothing childlike about her expression. "They lied to us," she said as soon as the medical team got her stabilized. "The Vkathera. They were here all along, watching, waiting. We need to get this data to Earth Command immediately." Hours later, in the Nightingale's secure briefing room, the data core revealed its secrets. The holographic display showed the colony's final hours in brutal detail. Ships that shouldn't exist, according to all official records, descended from the stars like angels of death. The Vkathera, a species that had repeatedly denied their very existence to human diplomats, struck without warning or mercy. They hit the shield generators first, Dr. Walker explained, her voice steady despite the horror playing out before them. Their weapons, we'd never seen anything like them. They didn't just destroy the shields, they inverted them, turned our own protection systems into kill zones. The footage showed colonists running through streets that boiled beneath their feet, children clutching parents who could no longer protect them. The Colonial Defense Force fighting back with everything they had. Their ships and weapons might as well have been throwing stones at a hurricane. "But I found something," Dr. Walker continued, her eyes now blazing with purpose. "In those final hours, while their ships filled our skies, our sensors recorded everything. Their communications, their shield frequencies, their weapon signatures, and most importantly, their weaknesses." She pulled up another dataset, this one showing complex technical readouts. "Their technology is advanced, but it's rigid, unchanging. They haven't had to adapt or improve in centuries because no one has successfully challenged them. Their ships can't handle unexpected variables in combat. They rely too heavily on pre-programmed response patterns." Captain Reynolds studied the data, his military training already seeing the possibilities. "You're saying we can beat them. I'm saying we can destroy them," Dr. Walker replied, and there was something in her voice that made everyone in the room straighten their spines. "But we'll need every ship we can get, every innovation we can create, every scrap of human ingenuity and adaptability." The captain nodded, already composing the message that would change the course of human history. As he worked, Dr. Walker stared at the final image from New Eden, a once beautiful world now scared beyond recognition. "They thought they were teaching us a lesson," she said softly. "Instead, they just showed us exactly who they are. And now we show them who we are." The message that left the Nightingale was short, but its impact would echo across the galaxy. New Eden has fallen. 15 million dead. Enemy identified. We have their weakness. Humanity, all of humanity, must respond. The time for talk is over. The silent echo of New Eden's death was about to become the thunder of humanity's response. The ancient Space Museum in Houston had been silent for decades, its exhibits gathering dust as humanity pushed further into the stars. But today, the old warships were waking up. Engineers swarmed over the restored hull of the UES Intrepid, a veteran of the Mars campaigns, their tools bringing new life to cold engines. "She'll fly again," Chief Engineer Marcus Thompson said, pride and determination mixing in his voice. These old girls were built to last. Similar scenes played out across Earth and every colony. Private shipping magnates turned over their fleets without hesitation. Mining corporations retrofitted their massive excavators with weapon systems. Even the Deep Space Racing League converted their sleek competition vessels into strike fighters. In lunar orbit, Admiral Sarah Harrison watched the numbers grow on her tactical display. 500,000 vessels. 600,000. Still rising. Her executive officer, Commander James Chen, updated the count hourly. "The civilian response is unlike anything we've seen, Admiral. Luxury cruise lines are converting their ships into hospital vessels. Independent traders are installing military-grade shields. Even the deep space archaeologists are offering their research vessels." But it wasn't just about numbers. Each ship brought innovation that the rigid Cathera could never have predicted. Mining lasers, designed to cut through asteroids, were modified to pierce enemy shields. Atmospheric processors from terraforming ships could now generate weaponized gas clouds in space. Even the massive solar collection arrays from power generation vessels were being repurposed as energy-draining nets. 700,000, Commander Chen announced finally. "That's our final count. The largest fleet ever assembled in human history." Admiral Harrison studied the massive holographic display showing their gathered forces. Converted cargo haulers flew in formation with cutting-edge military vessels. Restored museum pieces took their place alongside modern warships. Each ship represented not just firepower, but human ingenuity and determination. Dr. Walker's latest analysis just came in, Chen added, forwarding the report. The Cathera have no concept of adapting civilian technology for military use. Their rigid hierarchy doesn't allow for it. They won't be expecting half of what we're bringing. Harrison nodded. Remember the footage from New Eden. The Cathera had attacked with overwhelming force, never imagining that their actions would unite humanity like nothing before. Their perfect, unchanging military machine was about to meet human chaos and creativity head-on. The Admiral opened a channel to the entire fleet. 700,000 ships fell silent, waiting for her words. "Today, we are one fleet," she began. "It doesn't matter if you were a farmer's transport or a battlecruiser yesterday. Today, you are humanity's shield and sword. The enemy believes they know what we're capable of. They think they can calculate every variable, predict every move. They're wrong." She paused, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "Look to your left and right. See the diversity of our fleet. That's our strength. Each of you brings something unique to this fight. Use it. Improvise. Adapt. Show them what happens when you corner a species that has survived everything its own world could throw at it." The response was immediate. 700,000 ships lit up their running lights in acknowledgement, creating a star field that rivaled the Milky Way itself. "Final preparations are complete," Commander Chen reported. "The fleet is ready." Admiral Harrison took one last look at the tactical display. Humanity had never fielded such a force, and might never again. But then, humanity had never faced such a threat. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Operation Scattered Thunder begins now." Across the fleet, engines flared to life. From restored museum pieces to the most advanced military vessels, from converted mining ships to repurposed racing yachts, 700,000 vessels prepared to jump. The Cthulhu had shown humanity their worst. Now, humanity would show them something they'd never seen before: the combined might of a species that refused to go quietly into the night. The Cthulhu High Command expected a hammer blow. Their strategic AI predicted a massive human fleet would strike at one of their core systems, following traditional military doctrine. Instead, they got lightning. 700,000 ships split into 20,000 strike groups, each operating independently. The Cthulhu Defense Network, designed to track large fleet movements, crashed under the strain of monitoring so many small-scale FTL jumps. Captain Elena Rodriguez led Strike Group Whiskey 7, her modified mining vessel Deep Seeker, at the head of 35 ships. Their target: a Cthulhu sensor array in the Arcturus sector. "They're still using standard response patterns," she reported, watching the enemy ships move exactly as Dr. Walker had predicted. "All units, execute Thunder Protocol." Her fleet scattered like mercury droplets. Cargo ships released clouds of metallic chaff, creating false sensor readings. Racing yachts, their hulls now painted in light-absorbing carbon, darted through the chaos at speeds the Cthulhu targeting systems couldn't track. "Coming in hot," announced Jake Morrison, a former deep space racing champion, as his modified racer Swift Justice cut through the enemy formation. His ship's original plasma exhaust, designed for speed competitions, now served as an improvised weapon, melting through Cthulhu shield harmonics. Similar scenes played out across 300 star systems. The Cthulhu found their carefully maintained order shattered by human unpredictability. A luxury cruise ship, its pleasure decks converted to house EMP generators, knocked out a major defense station. A fleet of agricultural vessels used their atmospheric processors to create localized ion storms. In the Rigel sector, Commander David Chang watched his display light up with success reports. Strike groups report 60% of primary targets neutralized. The enemy is still trying to consolidate their forces. The Cthulhu response was predictable, exactly as Dr. Walker had said it would be. Their ships formed perfect battle lines, following combat protocols that had served them for millennia. But those protocols never accounted for mining lasers that could cut through capital ships, or racing vessels that could outmaneuver their best fighters. "All groups, initiate Phase 2. Admiral Harrison's voice came through the command channel. "Show them what those civilian modifications can do." A converted waste processing ship released its load of superheated plasma, creating a deadly space-borne firestorm. Deep space construction vessels used their magnetic towing beams to throw asteroids at enemy formations. Even the old museum ships proved their worth, their outdated systems too primitive for the Cthulhu electronic warfare to effect. In the Antares system, a former passenger liner now served as a command center. Its captain, Maria Foster, had once ferried tourists to view spectacular nebulae. Now she coordinated a strike force of 50 ships, each one a repurposed civilian vessel. "Their formations are breaking," she reported, watching the enemy fleet fragment under the assault. "They can't adapt fast enough to our mixed tactics." The Cthulhu communications they intercepted showed growing confusion and frustration. The enemy commanders couldn't understand how their superior technology was being defeated by what they considered primitive adaptations. "Let them wonder," Admiral Harrison responded to the reports flooding in. "Every minute they spend trying to understand our tactics is another minute they're not fighting effectively." By the time the first day of Operation Scattered Thunder ended, 300 Cthulhu systems had been hit. Their carefully maintained defense grid lay in ruins, their command structure was in chaos, and their military doctrine had been proven obsolete. As the strike groups regathered for the next wave, Captain Rodriguez sent one final message to Fleet Command: "The Thunder Protocol works. The enemy's greatest weakness is their inability to imagine. And imagination. That's humanity's greatest weapon. In the void of space, 700,000 ships prepared for their next strike, each one a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. The Cthulhu had built their empire on order and predictability. Now, they would watch it fall to chaos and creativity. Dr. Amanda Walker stood in the heart of Operation Phantom, a hidden facility buried deep within Mars' Olympus Mons. Around her, 500 of Earth's best hackers and engineers worked tirelessly, their screens filled with captured Cthulhu code. "Their network architecture is beautiful," said Maya Henderson, a former Black Hat hacker who'd been released from prison specifically for this project. "Beautiful, but rigid, like a crystal. Perfect until you find the right point to make it shatter." The Ghost Protocol was more than just a hacking program. It was digital warfare on a scale never before attempted. Dr. Walker's team had discovered that the Cthulhu battle network relied on absolute precision, and that would be their undoing. "Upload version 3.7, Dr. Walker commanded. "Target their primary battle groups in the Centaurus sector." The effect was immediate and devastating. Cthulhu targeting systems began showing human ships meters away from their actual positions. In space combat, where millimeters could mean the difference between a hit and a miss, this small deviation proved catastrophic. "Their ships are firing at our afterimages," reported Lieutenant James Wilson from the front lines. "Every shot is just slightly off. It's like they're fighting ghosts." But the team wasn't satisfied with just affecting targeting systems. They went deeper, finding ways to create phantom sensor readings that would trigger the Cthulhu's automatic response protocols. "Look at this," said Dr. Emily Chen, a quantum computing specialist. She pointed to a screen showing enemy fleet movements. "They're responding to threats that don't exist. Their own programming is forcing them to react, even though part of them must know it's not real." The psychological impact was even more significant than the physical damage. Cthulhu crews, who had always relied on their technology's infallibility, began to doubt everything their systems told them. Intercepted communication from their command ship, Maya announced, a grim smile on her face. "They're starting to think their equipment is haunted." Their word for it translates to soul sickness of the machines. Dr. Walker nodded, remembering the fires of New Eden. "Let them feel what it's like to have their world turn against them. Push the update to all sectors." The Ghost Protocol spread through enemy space like a digital plague. Cthulhu communication arrays began broadcasting horror stories to their own crews. Navigation systems showed impossible readings. Some ships' computers insisted they were in the middle of stars, causing crews to initiate emergency protocols that left them vulnerable. "We're not just breaking their technology," Dr. Walker explained to the Admiral during their daily briefing. "We're breaking their faith in it. Every time they double-check a sensor reading, every time they hesitate before firing. That's time our fleet can use." The results were clear in the battle reports. Cthulhu ships, despite their superior firepower, were becoming easier to defeat. Some crews refused to trust their targeting systems, resorting to visual confirmation in an age of light-speed combat. "Sir," Maya called out, her voice tight with excitement, "I found something in their core programming, a way to make their ships see each other as enemies." The room fell silent. Dr. Walker studied the code, her mind racing with the possibilities. "How many ships could we affect?" "All of them," Maya replied. "Their entire network uses the same base code. They never expected anyone to get this deep, so they never created different versions." Dr. Walker thought of the millions who had died at New Eden, of the worlds that still lay in the path of Cthulhu expansion. Do it. Let them learn the price of perfect uniformity. As the new code deployed, reports flooded in from across the battle lines. Cthulhu ships began firing on their own allies, unable to trust their systems to tell friend from foe. The perfect order they had maintained for millennia was unraveling thread by digital thread. Ghost Protocol is full success, Dr. Walker reported to Fleet Command. The enemy's greatest strength has become their greatest weakness. Their machines are now our weapons. In the depths of space, the mighty Theran fleet found itself fighting an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't trust, and couldn't understand. The ghosts of New Eden had come to haunt them, armed with lines of code instead of chains. Supreme Commander Vexthal stood before the High Council of the Vkathera, his ceremonial armor unable to hide the tension in his posture. The massive chamber, unchanged for 3,000 years, now felt like a tomb. "Explain how these primitives continue to defeat our perfect formations," demanded High Counselor Zarkesh, her voice dripping with contempt. "Our technology is superior. Our tactics are time-tested. Our warriors are without peer." "They fight like barbarians," Vexthal replied, struggling to maintain his composure. "They convert mining equipment into weapons. They use pleasure craft as strike fighters. Every battle group uses different tactics. There is no pattern to predict, no order to counter." The council chamber erupted in outrage. The very idea that their ancient military doctrine could be defeated by such chaos was unthinkable, yet the battle reports couldn't be denied. Meanwhile, in the Orient sector, Captain Sarah Martinez of the modified cargo ship Thunderchild watched her tactical display with satisfaction. "Look at them still flying in perfect formation. They haven't changed a single tactic since we started this war." Her executive officer, Jack Thompson, nodded as he studied the enemy movements. Their pride won't let them adapt. Every time we hit them with something new, they try to counter it with something from their ancient playbook. The Thunderchild, like most human ships, had evolved far beyond its original design. Its cargo holds now housed experimental weapon systems. Its navigation computer had been modified to perform maneuvers that would have been considered insane in peacetime. Back in the Vkatheran Council chamber, a young officer named Kexri dared to speak up. "Supreme Commander, perhaps we should consider new tactics." The humans. Silence. Zarkesh thundered. "Our ways have served us for 3 millennia. We will not abandon them because of some temporary setbacks against these savages." But the setbacks were far from temporary. Across 300 star systems, the story was the same. Vkatheran ships, powerful but predictable, found themselves outmaneuvered by vessels that should have been easy prey. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the Fleet Command channel. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega. Let's show them what human ingenuity really means." The human fleet's response was immediate and devastating. Cargo ships released swarms of modified mining drones, too small for the Vkatheran targeting systems to track effectively. Converted passenger liners used their atmospheric shields to create bubbles of superheated plasma. Impossible. A Vkatheran commander watched his perfect battle line disintegrate under attacks from directions their doctrine said were invalid. They cannot fight this way. It goes against all strategic logic. But the humans didn't care about strategic logic. Every ship in their fleet had become a laboratory for innovation. Successful tactics were shared, modified, and improved upon within hours. While the Vkathera clung to their ancient ways, humanity's fleet evolved with every engagement. "Send in the next wave," Captain Martinez ordered. "Different pattern this time. Let's see how their perfect formation handles some organized chaos." The Thunderchild led its battle group in a series of maneuvers that would have made their original cargo ship designers faint. Mining lasers, modified beyond recognition, cut through Vkatheran shields like they were paper. In the council chamber, the reports of yet another defeat led to more accusations and recriminations. Not once did anyone suggest learning from their enemies' adaptability. "Their pride will destroy them," Dr. Walker observed, watching the battle reports from her command center. "They'd rather die following their ancient doctrine than live by learning something new." As the day's battles ended, the cost of that pride was clear. More Catharan ships lost, more territory ceded, more evidence that their perfect military machine was being dismantled by what they considered primitive chaos. "Send word to all fleet commands," Admiral Harrison ordered. "The enemy's greatest weakness is now confirmed. They cannot adapt, will not adapt. Press the advantage. Show them the price of perfect pride." Deep in the heart of Catharan space, Junior Commander Lex Vey stood before the holographic display of New Eden's ruins. The classified archives had been difficult to access, but what she found there shook her to her core. The humans built their colony without knowing. She whispered to her gathered conspirators, all young officers like herself. The Temple of First Light lay buried beneath their city. Our leaders chose genocide over a simple warning. The evidence was undeniable. Diplomatic messages ignored. Peaceful solutions dismissed. The High Council had chosen annihilation rather than risk the perceived shame of admitting that humans had accidentally settled on sacred ground. On the bridge of the UES Nightingale, Dr. Amanda Walker received the encrypted transmission from the Catharan underground. Her hands trembled as she read the truth behind New Eden's destruction. 15 million people, she said, her voice tight with controlled rage. 15 million lives lost because they were too proud to send a simple message. Captain Reynolds studied the data beside her. "This changes everything. The younger generation of Cathara, they're not like their leaders. They want change." Across Catharan space, the revelation spread like wildfire through secure channels. Young officers shared the truth with their crews. Colonial governors questioned orders from the High Council. The perfect order of 3,000 years began to crack. "We cannot continue this way," Lex Vey declared to a growing network of dissidents. "Our leaders speak of honor while committing atrocities. They preach perfection while leading us to destruction." The response from the High Council was swift and brutal. Ships commanded by young officers were ordered to return to port. Colonial governors were replaced. But the truth could not be contained. Dr. Walker seized the opportunity, broadcasting a message on frequencies the young Thera had provided. "We know the truth now. We know you're not all like them. We've seen your strength in battle. Imagine what we could accomplish together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals." In the Centaurus sector, a Catharan battle group, led by progressive officers, lowered their shields in the middle of combat. Their commander, Texelar, opened a channel to the human fleet. "We choose a different path," he announced. "We choose evolution over stagnation. We choose truth over pride. We choose life over ancient lies." Admiral Harrison's response was measured but immediate. "All human forces, hold fire on the surrendered ships. Prepare to receive diplomatic envoys." The defections began slowly, then built like an avalanche. Entire colony worlds declared their independence from the High Council. Young officers led their ships away from suicidal attacks, choosing instead to join the growing reform movement. "The old ways are dying," Lex Vey told her growing coalition. "Look at what the humans have shown us. Their adaptability, their creativity. These are not weaknesses. They are the future." The High Council's response grew more desperate. Orders were given to fire on defecting ships. Colonial worlds were threatened with orbital bombardment, but each act of desperation only drove more to the reformers' cause. In a secure conference room aboard the Nightingale, Dr. Walker met with Lex Vey and other reform leaders. The meeting that would have been unthinkable months ago now felt like the most natural thing in the world. "We can help you build something new," Dr. Walker offered, "not by destroying your culture, but by helping it grow. Change doesn't mean losing who you are. It means becoming more than you were." Lex Vey's response echoed through both fleets. The Temple of First Light was built to celebrate new beginnings. What better way to honor it than by forging a new path together? As the day ended, nearly a third of the Catharan fleet had joined the reformers. The empire that had stood unchanged for 3,000 years was transforming, its younger generation leading the way into an uncertain but hopeful future. They're learning to question, Dr. Walker reported to Earth Command. And that's the most human thing they could do. Fire bloomed in the void as Catharan ships exchanged shots with their former allies. The reformed fleet, led by Commander Lexvi, had adopted human combat tactics with startling speed. Their ships now moved in unpredictable patterns, breaking every rule of traditional combat. Watch how they're learning, Captain Sarah Martinez observed from the bridge of the Thunderchild. Her ship now served as a training vessel, teaching young Catharan crews the art of adaptive warfare. They're not just copying our moves, they're making them their own. The traditional Catharan forces found themselves fighting an enemy that knew all their weaknesses. Reformed ships targeted the exact points where ancient doctrine said shields were impenetrable. They struck from angles that conservative commanders had deemed impossible. Break formation. Lexvi commanded her fleet as they engaged a traditional battle group. Show them what we've learned about true strength. Her ships scattered like a flock of startled birds, each one moving independently yet part of a greater whole. The traditional forces, still flying in perfect geometric patterns, couldn't track them all. On the bridge of the UES Nightingale, Dr. Walker watched the battle unfold with a mixture of pride and amazement. They're combining their technical precision with human creativity. It's beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way. The reformed Cathara had done more than just adopt human tactics. They'd embraced the entire philosophy of adaptation and innovation. Their engineers modified ancient weapons with new ideas. Their tacticians questioned everything they'd been taught. Enemy fleet approaching in standard attack pattern, reported a young Theran officer named Mexri. She smiled as she added, "They're still using the same formations from 3,000 years ago." "Then let's show them 3,000 years of evolution in one day," Lexvi responded. "All ships, execute Thunder Dance Protocol." The combined human reformed fleet moved like a living thing, each ship playing its part in a deadly ballet. Converted mining ships created debris fields that reformed Catharan vessels used as cover. Human racing ships led traditional forces into carefully planned ambushes. In the command center, Admiral Harrison watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The reformed forces have learned more in 3 months than their species did in 3 millennia. That's what happens when you stop fearing change. The traditional forces found their strategies, perfect for so long, coming apart at the seams. Their rigid formations became death traps. Their predictable attack patterns led them into one defeat after another. "Look at that," Captain Martins said, pointing to a group of reformed ships executing a complex maneuver. "Last week we had to talk them through basic formation changes. Now, they're inventing new tactics on the fly." The revolution wasn't just happening in space. On Catharan worlds, young governors implemented changes that would have been unthinkable months ago. They asked questions. They made decisions without consulting ancient texts. They learned to trust their own judgment. "We're not just winning battles," Dr. Walker told the Combined Fleet Command. "We're winning hearts and minds." Every traditional commander who sees their reformed counterparts fighting effectively has to question their own beliefs. As the day's fighting ended, the statistics told the story. The reformed fleet, despite being outnumbered, had won 70% of their engagements. Their casualties were lower, their success rate higher, their innovation constant. "Send word to all commands," Lexvi ordered. "The time of blind obedience is over. We fight not for glory or tradition, but for the right to choose our own path." The message spread through both fleets, a promise and a warning. The reformed Cathara had found something their species had lost millennia ago: the courage to change. "They're not just learning to fight like us," Admiral Harrison observed. "They're learning to think like us. And that's a far more powerful weapon than any battleship." 1 year after New Eden's fall, The combined fleet surrounded the last stronghold of the traditional Theran forces. The High Council had retreated to their ancient capital world, protected by their remaining loyal ships. Dr. Amanda Walker stood on the bridge of the Nightingale, looking at the massive fleet display. 700,000 human vessels, mixed with reformed Theran ships, in a breathtaking display of unity. "They expect us to destroy them," Commander Lexfay said, her holographic image floating beside Dr. Walker. "It's what they would have done in our position. It's what they did to New Eden." Admiral Harrison joined the conference from the fleet command ship. "Then let's show them something they don't expect. Something they never could have learned in 3,000 years of victory." The message they sent to the capital shocked the High Council. Not terms of surrender, but terms of reconciliation. Not demands for vengeance, but offers of peace. "Your children have learned to see beyond ancient ways." The message read, "They have found strength in change, power in adaptation. Join them. Let the last act of your council be its wisest." In the capital's Great Hall, High Councilor Zarkesh read the terms with trembling hands. No execution orders, no forced exile. Instead, the offer of advisory positions in the new government, a chance to share their wisdom while learning new ways. "They beat us with superior tactics," Supreme Commander Vexthal admitted. "Then they beat us with superior culture. And now they beat us with superior mercy." The response came within hours. The great gates of the capital opened. The remaining fleet powered down their weapons. 3,000 years of unchanging rule ended not with a final blaze of glory, but with a choice to change. 6 months later, Dr. Walker stood in the ruins of New Eden. Around her, human and Theran construction teams worked together, building something new from the ashes of the old. "We're keeping the name," she told the mixed group of human and Theran officials. "But this time, it will be a true Eden, a place where both our peoples can learn from each other." The new colony rose around the Temple of First Light, now carefully excavated and restored. Human children played in gardens tended by Theran botanists. Reformed Theran youth study human art and music while teaching their own ancient sciences. Captain Martinez, now Governor Martinez, watched a group of young Thera testing modified racing ships. They're already talking about starting an interspecies racing league. Apparently some of our pilot instructors got them hooked on speed. The combined defense fleet still patrolled the stars, but their mission had changed. The 700,000 ships now served as guardians of peace, their crews a mix of both species. Admiral Harrison's final report to Earth Command summed up the transformation. "We went to war seeking vengeance for New Eden. We found victory not in destruction, but in change. The Thera learned to adapt. We learned to forgive." Both lessons were equally important. In the New Eden colony's central plaza, a monument rose, a holographic display showing both the colony's destruction and its rebirth. Beside it, a simple plaque bore words in both human and Theran script. "Here lies the end of one path and the beginning of another. Remember the cost of pride. Remember the power of change. Remember that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemy, but transforming them into friends." Dr. Walker stood before the monument, remembering that day 1 year ago, when she'd emerged from the bunker, carrying the data that would change 2 civilizations. Was it worth it? A young Theran student asked her. All the fighting, all the death, to get to this point. She watched a mixed group of human and Theran children racing past, playing some game they'd invented together. "The cost was too high," she said, "but the result is worth everything we do to maintain it." Above them, the stars shone on a galaxy forever changed by humanity's response to tragedy. 700,000 ships had gone to war. They had found something far more precious than victory. They had found a future.